In a real website, the values assigned to variables would be drawn from a database or some other data source. But to keep things simple in this page, they've been hard-coded here above the doc type. Now we've got some variables, let's embed them in the HTML to display their contents. And along the way, we'll also look at how to join strings using the dot operator, as well as an important feature of double-quoted strings. So what I want to do is to replace the book title with this variable here, title. So let's just scroll down, and my H2 headings here, book title, select that HTML, delete it, add some PHP tags, and between them I'm going to type echo, which is the command for displaying simple variables such as text and numbers. And it'll be echo title followed by a semicolon. If I save that and go to my browser, I need to load that page. It's 01_05 and the name is display PHP. And there we are, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The value stored in the title variable is being displayed. So let's change the author, delete a another. I'm going to add some PHP tags. And this time, instead of using echo, I'm going to use print. And the variable is author. And if I save that, I've now got echo title and print author. Go to my browser, reload that, and Douglas Adams is being displayed, the value stored in the author variable. So what's the difference between the two? Well, as you've just seen, there isn't one. Both of them display the value that's stored in the variable. There is a very subtle difference between the two, and if you ever get to a really advanced stage of PHP, you might be interested in the difference, but for all intents and purposes, they do exactly the same. Most people end up using whichever one they learned first. I learned echo first. I also happen to prefer it because it's one less letter to type. Another thing that you will find is a lot of people put parentheses around the variable. So if I put parentheses around title after echo and do the same with print, put parentheses around author, if I save that, go back to the browser and reload it, notice any difference? No, didn't think so. There is no difference. This is one of the things in PHP that happens to be optional, putting parentheses around the variables used with echo and print. Because they're optional, it's extra typing. I recommend that you don't bother with them at all, but just in case you see code that uses them, you know what that actually means. Now the book description. I'm going to replace that text. And this time, instead of using a full opening PHP tag, I'm going to use a shorthand tag. So open angle bracket, question mark, equals sign. And then the closing tag is the same as always. And this is a shorthand way of typing echo. It can be used with only one statement, but it's a useful shorthand. So if I type in description and then save that, refresh my browser, you can see that the description is being displayed. As you've seen, this is a really useful shorthand, but I must warn you that it's not supported on all servers. If your server is running PHP 5.4 or later, it's definitely supported. If your server is running an earlier version of PHP, it's only supported if the configuration is set to support short opening tags. Because it's not supported by all servers, throughout the rest of the course I'll be using the full opening PHP tag and echo. But if your server supports this shorthand, please use it. It's really quite useful. Now, the problem with the description is that it doesn't contain the answer. So we need to add the answer by joining two strings together. And the way that you join two strings together in PHP is with the dot operator. So I'm going to add a space after description, type a dot or a period, and then another space and answer. And I'll save that and refresh my browser. There is the answer being displayed, but notice there's no space between that closing colon, which is at the end of description, and the 42. Putting the space on either side of the dot operator doesn't add a space into the string. The reason for the space is purely and simply to make it easier to read your code, because that dot operator can be rather small and difficult to spot. You can't use the plus sign as you use in JavaScript. That won't work. The dot operator joins two strings in PHP. If you want to add an extra space, there are several ways in which you can do it. One of them is to add a literal space, in other words, to add a new string. So if I put a opening quote, type a space, and a closing quote, type a space, another dot operator, and then save, I now have a space between the two. So let's just reload that, and that space has been added there. But there's actually a much better way of doing it, and that's to use a double quoted string. So I've deleted that extra string and the dot operators. I've got a space between description and answer, and I'm now going to wrap them in double quotes. Save, reload, and that space is still there. What happens if I use single quotes? Well, let's see. And reload the browser. Now, instead of the values in those variables being displayed, I get the names of the variables themselves. When you use single quotes, that gives you literal text. If you use double quotes and you have a variable inside those double quotes, the value stored in the variable is displayed. So let's change that back to double quotes. And the last thing I want to do is to display the price. And I want to have a dollar in front of my price value. So I'm going to type a dollar into the HTML, and then I'm going to have a PHP opening tag, echo and price, and my closing tag. And then if we save and view again in the browser, refresh the browser, there we are. The dollar sign has been added in front, price $10.99. So you've seen three different ways to display numbers and strings using echo, print, and the echo shorthand. All three work with variables or literal values. There's nothing really to choose between echo and print, but echo is one letter less to type. The echo shorthand works only with single statements and isn't supported on all servers, so test it carefully before you use it. You've also seen how to join strings with the dot operator and how to embed variables in a double-quoted string.